So another NAMM has come and gone, and after spending 3 days on the show floor, these are the synths, samplers, and weird experiments that stood out to me the most. Let's get into it. So let's start with the Casio sampler. This was one of the most requested things for me to check out at NAMM. I actually didn't know it was there until I got a bunch of comments on my first day's short, and I'm glad everyone let me know to check it out because this thing was awesome. This is a small portable sampler. It has a very retro, almost Game Boy-like appearance, but there's a surprising amount of power under the hood and a really cool sequencer. I think what surprised me most was how these samples played back. Typically on a sampler, whenever you hit a pad, it's just going to start playing. But on this, they actually played in time to the BPM you had set. This was a lot like Ableton Live clip launching, which I thought is a really cool feature. And size-wise, it felt great in terms of being a portable sampler. Not too large, but also not so small like something like the PO33. There's 2 circular controls for effects. Casio was very upfront that this is something they're testing. There's no price set yet. It sounds like they want to see the interest. This is more of a prototype or work in progress, but they did tell me that the OS isn't finished. There's things they may still add. So let's see when it comes out what it looks like. As for how this fits in a beat making workflow, this would be a great beginner sampler. It's got good sample time, it sounds like. There's quite a few banks. The sequencer looks awesome to actually program the tracks. Live performance was great. So I think it would be a nice way to get started into sampling. I really want to get more time with it to try and make beats on it to really give a fair assessment as to how it works as a beat making device. But for live performance and just for sample playback, I could see this being something like the P6 or EP133's competitor. So while I enjoyed my time with it and I see a lot of promise here, I want to see more from it and I want to know where they land in terms of the features, in terms of the price. So I'm definitely going to keep my eye on it. But right now it feels more like potential than a final product. All right, and next up is the MPC. And I actually went over to the Akai booth to check out the MPC XL, the newest one they've just announced, but they only had 2 out and there was a massive line for it. Now, the first thing that surprised me here was actually the pads. These have been updated on the Live 3 and they have a lot more versatility and programmability because every area of the pad can be programmed to either different samples, the same sample with different effects put on. You're no longer limited to just the 16 pads. Another thing that looked really cool was the new step sequencer. This seems like a very good way to program things quickly and not having to use the touchscreen. Speaking of the touchscreen, this is much more of a DAW than it is just a dedicated sampler. There's synths, plugins, there's even third-party plugin support. They had some from Spitfire on there. And that's actually part of the reason I've always avoided modern MPCs. It just seems a little more DAW-like, and if I want a DAW, I'm just going to use this. But I will say, using the MPC Live 3 at NAMM has me rethinking that a little bit. I definitely see the potential. I see why so many people love it because of how feature complete it is. It works for beat making, for live performance. They had actually someone on stage at Global Media Day performing on the XL.
Allow me to show you something.
It's also got stem splitting, which is huge when I work with my DAWless gear. It's usually as a stereo 2-track, but then I like to stem split it. So having that built into the end game sampler that I would be using is an awesome plus. Now, the biggest limitation for me is just how complex it is. That's also its biggest strength. There's so much you can do on it, but that does seem like there would be a bit of a learning curve. But if you use an MPC, let me know in the comments if that's true or if it's pretty easy to pick up and use. Next up is the Stylophone VOICE. Now this is on the other end of price. The MPC Live 3 is I think around $1,600 or $1,700. The Stylophone VOICE is a very budget-friendly $50. For that price, it's doing some interesting things. There are performance effects. There's effects that go over the samples. And then there's 3 sample pads and a pad that acts as the drum kit. Each of the 3 main sample pads can be played chromatically across the Stylophone keyboard, and then the drum kit pad has multiple different kits across that keyboard. You can sample in, it has a microphone, but when I asked them about resampling and sample slicing, They mentioned that at least as of yet, it doesn't have it. It's not quite finished. I think they have it slated for around July release. Now, what surprised me most here is the workflow. It is limited. I mean, it's a $50 sampler. That being said, it's limited in a way that kind of fits that PO33 vibe. But unlike the PO33, it has built-in effects and has a much more performance style sequencer. They had told me it's around 10-bit or something to that effect, and it's definitely got that gritty, old school sampler vibe, which I absolutely love. And more to that, the effects sounded great. That distortion, I mean, it may not be to everyone's taste, but that distortion is gritty. And I like that. You can really destroy that sound. And in terms of who this is for, I think this is a seriously great beginner sampler. This is something I would love to give my son as a first sampler, just to kind of have fun and make noise with. But also, because of the effects and the bitrate, I think this would be a great sound design tool for anyone looking to really grit up their samples before sending those into a DAW or into another sampler or setup. And the limitation is that it is limited, but at $50, I think that's kind of the point. And while it does look awesome as is, I think if they can add a couple other features like sample slicing or even, and more importantly, resampling, given the cool effects, I think this would become an even more insanely fun little box. Next up is one of the most impressive instruments I played at NAMM, and that's the ASM Leviathan. This is a massive, great sounding hybrid synthesizer that blends digital and analog elements into a really deep sound design instrument. Now, I had spent some time with the Hydrasynth a few NAMMs ago, and it was awesome, but that's a fully digital synth. Now, this Leviathan changes things up a little bit. It's got algorithmic based digital oscillators, but there's also analog elements like a really great sounding filter. But the biggest surprise for me with this was actually the keyboard. It had some really interesting aftertouch and pressure response. So depending on the preset, as you hold chords, depending on how hard you press the keys, things can change in the sound. So like one of them was a piano sound, but as you held it down, it would make this sort of arpeggiated layer underneath the held and sustained piano. Speaking of sound design, there's an insane amount of oscillators and ways you can program them. And honestly, this is where someone like Randy from ASM can explain it.
There are 144 preset algorithms, but we have algorithm morphing now. So you can actually have different algorithms in every slot here, and then I can it's not crossfading, it's actually shifting the map between these algorithms. So all of those oscillator, you can see thumbnails of them, all of those modulator carrier pairs or sets, because they're not always pairs, they're doing different things to each other, and it's kind of like the Hydrasynth had wave scan, this has like algorithm scan. And I can set up an LFO to do that automatically.
So yeah, in terms of who this is for, this is definitely not a beginner synth. It's expensive, it can go deep into programming, and it's clearly aimed at sound designers, composers, and performers who want a lot of power in a single instrument. And that's actually where I see it fitting in my setup, as I've been downsizing and trying to reduce how many pieces of gear I can use. Something like this that has crazy string sounds, piano sounds, all kinds of sonic flexibility would be kind of a one and done synth that you could just send into a sampler and have basically a complete workstation or music station with just a couple pieces of gear. And similar to the MPC, my biggest limitation or issue is just its price and complexity. There is a desktop version that's more affordable, but you don't have the keyboard. There is something that works like keys, but it's not the same. I really like having keyboards on my synths because I'm usually using just one, and I don't want to also have MIDI and a sampler plugged in. It's just better if I can have it all kind of in one spot. So yes, it's a limitation if that's an issue for you or price is an issue. Now, on the other end of UI and getting away from the complexity is Erica Synth's booth. Now, I got to check out two instruments at this booth, and both were awesome. First up was the Hex drums, which is an all analog drum machine. And what surprised me here was how immediate everything was. Basically, in terms of sequencing and just getting started, what you see on the hardware is what you get. All of the drums are laid out. You can tweak all of the settings. And then if you want to switch between which one to program, you just hold shift and press which one, and then now the step sequencer will program that one. Very quick to use. And I was just coming from the MPC, and it was a breath of fresh air to just be able to actually use something to maybe not its full extent, but to where I could just get a sound going and just start jamming on it. Then I also got to check out their steam pipe synth. Now this one was very weird in a good way. At the time, I wasn't really looking into the sound design on it because it was so quick to use. The presets sounded incredible. So I was just getting lost jamming. But then afterwards, I looked into what this synth actually is. It's pretty crazy. So steam pipe apparently replaces traditional oscillators with a physical modeling engine that's based off of how wind and string instruments generate sound. So in terms of who this gear is for, anybody that likes dedicated hardware, these are great options. Very much what you see is what you get. You're not getting lost in menus and all that, diving into different settings and things like that. The hardware's there. It's meant to do something, and it does it exceptionally well. Now, again, limitation-wise, like I was saying with the desktop version of the Leviathan, I like to have a keyboard on my synths. So it's a limitation for me. It's not necessarily a limitation. And if you already have a MIDI controller, it's probably not a downside anyways, but I do just want to mention it because for me, that is something. But overall, this booth was a great reminder that sometimes simpler, more focused hardware can be way more inspiring. All right, now we're getting into some of the weird stuff. And one of the weirdest things I saw was Roland's Project Lydia. This is an AI-based sound modeling pedal that turns whatever signal you send into it into completely different instruments. And right now, it's very much a proof of concept. So this project was inspired by Roland's old DIY pedal line, and Lydia itself uses a Raspberry Pi, but it's not a finished product. It's not even set for release, but I saw them demo it on stage at Global Media Day, and I just had to see how it actually works and if it works beyond just a presentation. So the two main sound models I tried were using guitar as the main signal source. It would turn it into taiko drums and also a vocal model. And what's interesting here is that dynamics and the different ways you play an instrument actually matter to what sounds come out. The taiko model was actually pretty usable. It made some pretty great sounding drums. The vocal one is definitely much more of a gimmick. And they did also run a T8 through it, and that was doing some really cool things, changing those drum sounds into almost melodic sounds in very weird and unique ways. So what really grabbed me here though is the potential. I'm primarily a guitarist, and the idea that I could play guitar and turn it into something like a piano sound or strings or even drums is an awesome thought, because while I play keyboard, while I program drums, guitar is my primary instrument, and I'm definitely much better on guitar than any of those others. So the thought of being able to get very expressive piano with the chords I like to play on guitar shows a lot of promise to me, or at least potential. Now that's not what this does at the moment. The two I talked about were really the only ones they had said to me could work with guitar or work well with guitar. So for me, this one isn't about what it is today, but the thought of where this could go. But where this goes from here is an open question. Right now, it definitely feels more like a proof of concept or experiment than an actual tool. The sounds themselves definitely border more on gimmicky or novel. I thought the taiko drums were actually pretty usable, and some with the T8, but I mean, the vocal one, I don't know if I have many uses for that. But if this concept evolves into models like electric pianos or violins and cellos, I think this could be a very powerful tool in any live instrumentalist's arsenal. All right, and last up for me today is the Yamaha Seqtrak. Now, we did cover this last year, and actually I was then able to get a Seqtrak and have made quite a few videos on it. But just before NAMM, Seqtrak got a massive 2.0 update, and so the synth rep, Blake, walked me through everything that was new in it.
There's your percussion one track, and I hit this, and it turns it in to a synth track. And now I said I wanted some extra something.
All the same patches, right?
Yeah, so I wanted a pad for that one. So all of these could be synth tracks, and they show up type synth.
Yeah.
Say, let's say I use all of these, and I get to just, oh, wait a minute, now I only have a kick drum track. So we have this other track type that's called a drum kit track. So now the drum kit track, I get all my drums back just on one track.
And honestly, a lot of these updates are great quality of life improvements that I think really expand the use and functions of the Seqtrak. So those were the biggest updates to the Seqtrak. Now, one thing I do have to mention is that the sampler still got no love. I love the Seqtrak for creating ideas. It's got great sounds. It's got a very easy to use sequencer, and the effects are great, lots of per track things. But the sampler, as a primarily sample-based artist, is definitely a bit lacking. There's no chopping, no sample slicing, and you can't fake sample slicing by using parameter locks on the start point. I would love to see some updates to the sampler. I'm hoping we do. It's great to see any updates coming on the Seqtrak and that they're still supporting it. It's awesome to see that. I just hope the sampler gets some updates as well. But where things got interesting and a bit weird is actually when I went to the Creator Lounge and saw something they're testing on the Seqtrak app, adding AI sample generation using Boomi. You type in a prompt in this AI sample generation section, and for the example they showed me, they just put in some sort of dark techno prompt. Once you put that in, you can generate either a single sound, like if you wanted to make just a kick drum, but you can also make a full sample kit, which includes multiple drum tracks, but also synth tracks that it generates. Once it's generated, you can actually instantly put it into the Seqtrak and just start sequencing the sounds. Now, I still have a lot of questions about this. It definitely feels like an experiment, a test, similar to Project Lydia. This may never even release. They're just saying it's something they're experimenting with. So I'm curious to see where it goes and if it comes out. So we'll keep an eye on it. Now, I know there's a lot of opinions about AI and more specifically AI in music production right now, but I just wanted to share what I saw here because it seems like AI is, whether for better or for worse, becoming a part of the experimentation for where music production tools are going. But those were my favorite pieces of gear that I saw at NAMM 2026. It's awesome just to see some new ideas coming out in the synth and sampler space, but it's also always a good reminder that innovation only matters if it fits your workflow. New gear is always exciting, but there's definitely a balance between chasing what's next and making the most out of the gear you already have. And if you want to see some tips on how to do that, check out this video next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.